Hello everyone and welcome to Tattoo Masters Academy UK. So today I am doing a Harry Potter Stag piece. Now I'm going to be the first to admit that my video cut out more than halfway throughout doing this piece. So I apologise in advance, but you will see the beginning of this piece, the start of the shading and also the end result. Now for this piece I am using a 5 round liner, and then I do move on when I start my shading to use a 7 round mag. Now many of you can probably see that my stencil is actually not as clear as what I would usually like it to be. However, I was perfectly comfortable working with it. I would suggest if you are a total beginner or if you're just starting out in tattooing, please don't attempt it. If you can't rework the stencil by using your pen, then wipe off and redo your stencil. So you will have noticed that instead of starting at the bottom of my design, I decided to go straight in for the eyes. Now, this is something that I would actually do if I was painting or drawing. For me, the eyes are the most important part. Logistically here, because my stencil was not the best to work on, I knew that I did not want to lose that eye outline. So I did go straight into it. I managed to get away with it and not rubbing the rest of my stencil because I tend to hang the needle out, and I use my pinky finger to balance myself on top of my design. Again, something I wouldn't recommend doing if you're not comfortable with how you work, because it doesn't make you very stable if you are just balancing with your pinky finger. So for me, once I knew that I'd got those facial features in, then I could focus on the rest of the outline and work my way upwards towards the antlers. And once I'd done that, I then started to work on the finer lines that are within the stag piece, just to get a little bit more detail in there. So machine wise, I'm using my Dragon Hawk Fold Pro machine. For my lining, I've got this set to a stroke of 3.9 and my voltage is on 8.3. Now I find that this is adequate for this client. I have worked on this client before and she does take the ink really well. Now you may have noticed that my stencil with my Deathly Hallows symbol has rubbed out. However, I still have markings in there. So what I decided to do at the start of this piece, because I realised my stencil was not the strongest, was I decided to bloodline the outline of the Deathly Hallows in, because the Deathly Hallows symbol is going to be created using negative space and shading around the symbol. So I knew I'd be working on top of this design by trying to get the stag in. So by bloodlining, it means I can still see my stencil marks without there being too many issues. For my shading, I'm using a dark grey, black, medium grey, a light grey, and also I do have an extra light grey. Now usually I would create my own drop system that I would use because I feel I have a bit more control with this. However, for this piece I did want to explore with a set of extreme greywash, and I have to say I was quite pleased with the outcome. The only addition that I made was I did add Eternal Ink opaque grey to each of my sets, just to give it a little bit more depth. And I tend to find adding something like an opaque grey will just bring a black and grey piece to life. Most of the shading for the stag has been done using stipple shading and a bit of pepper shading. You can see here I'm adding a bit more of the opaque grey as well, just to give a little bit more depth and definition in certain areas. I do switch over to my 7 round mag when I'm working on the Deathly Hallows background, and then to touch up and create softer shading within the stag in certain areas. For this piece, I decided to get all of my black work in, and then I worked on the lighter areas. So usually when it comes to things like colour work, you would always work from dark to light. However, when I'm working with black and grey, I always tend to get my black work in, but then I will go from the lightest colour to the darkest to make sure that I'm not oversaturating any negative space or any lighter areas that I want to keep there. Now this is the finished piece. I have softly shaded the background to keep the negative space of the Deathly Hallows symbol. I've also added white to the areas of the stag to make it pop, and this was the last thing that I did. So I hope you found that really interesting. I hope you like the design. Please do like and subscribe.